Hello and welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the latest look at one of Newcastle United's newest signings, Yoane Wissa. It's a pleasure to welcome back to the show Daniel Blackham, Deputy US Sports Editor and more importantly, a Brentford fan. If you follow the podcast, you will know Dan every time comes on to speak about Brentford, and he's going to give us the insight into Newcastle United's new number 9. Dan, welcome back to the show. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Thanks very much for having me. Yeah, excited to be here.
You're looking forward to this one? You just rubbed your hands there.
Yeah, any chance I get to chat about Brentford or in particular Yoane Wissa at the moment, I'm definitely going to take.
Well, there's plenty to talk about, but just in a sentence, first of all, just sum up the player Newcastle United have bought, and then we'll go in a bit more depth.
He's a brilliant striker. He's a brilliant footballer, and I definitely think Newcastle United did the right thing by forking over the money. I'm not just saying that because it was Brentford who got the money, but for what Newcastle need, for especially when you think about the versatility across the front three as well, brilliant signing.
Well, fingers crossed he proves to be just that. Let's talk about the chase then, because it was drawn out over the summer. Everyone was getting a little bit sick of it. It was on, it was off. It was then kind of just stuck in the middle somewhere. And finally, on transfer deadline day, it was very much on and it was secured. Just talk to us about kind of your feelings and your emotions throughout the summer when it came to this transfer saga.
Well, to be perfectly honest, towards the back end of last season, it looked sort of evident that Brian would go, Brian and Wemmer, and it was sort of, it was a matter of how late into the window is that one going to go. We know he's going to go. He was super respectful. He didn't put out any sort of Instagram or social media requests or anything like that. Didn't unfollow the club. Didn't go on strike. Didn't do anything wrong. He just did the right thing. Even sort of said it was briefed to the media anyway that he would be willing to play if he didn't get his move to United. It was them or no one. And then all of a sudden, it sort of seemed at the start like it was going to be Brian or Whissa. It wouldn't be both of them. And then that sort of stance slowly softened once the figures started getting thrown around there. Once the sort of interest was in there about Whissa, I think most Brentford fans accepted he'd probably go. He was brilliant last season. It was a sort of breakout year, standout year for Brentford. After two sort of perhaps questionable seasons, it's not like he's been superb all of his time in West London. He had a bit of a slow start, and obviously that's playing second fiddle to Ivan Toney as well. You've got to remember that obviously he wasn't the starting striker. He didn't have the same relationship with Mbeumo. But when it sort of started to come out that he was really agitating for it, I think that a lot of Brentford fans sort of looked at it and thought, well, let's show a little bit more respect. The club's backed you, fans have backed you. He's the name that the Brentford fans sang "Whissa's on fire" after every win and that sort of thing. He loved the fans by all accounts. He seemed happy. So then, for him to all of a sudden turn around, unfollow the club, remove his profile picture on social media, and I know that's a silly thing, but it just sort of makes you think well, what was all of this for? What was everything for? What was all the sort of the kids that you see at Brentford with his name on the back of their shirts and that? It's where's the sort of two-way street in terms of respect? So I think a lot of Brentford fans, myself included, were quite upset with how he treated the club and how he treated the fans. I should just say I don't blame him at all for actually agitating for the move and going for the move. You saw what happened with Mark Gay. If he didn't push for the move, he probably wouldn't have got it. And also, how old is he now? 29. He turned recently. When else is he going to get the chance to play European football? It's unlikely it was ever going to happen at Brentford, especially when you look at, Igor Thiago was always going to be Brentford's starting striker this season, so he was going to be pushed down to the left wing. But then he's competing with Kevin Schade. Would he have been a regular starter this season? I'm rambling, but that's to say that it overshadowed the Brian Mbeumo transfer in terms of the one that Brentford fans were more upset with, for sure.
So do you think he's kind of damaged? I don't know if legacy is too big of a word, because we look at how Alexander Isak left Newcastle and he played out in very similar circumstances, but with him, obviously scored the second goal in the Carabao Cup final to secure Newcastle their first trophy in 70 years. So the word legacy is definitely there, but it's been destroyed because of the way he acted. Is it kind of the same for Brentford, their fans, and Whissa over the way that he's acted?
100%, yeah. I mean, I obviously can't say the word that Brentford fans have been chanting about him now, but I think you can use your imagination guess what? Guess the type of mood that's been in the away end at games so far this season, and at the G-Tech as well. Fans are furious, and you could easily say rightly so. The fact that he will have known Brian was going, so then you think, well, should he still have pushed for the move, knowing that Brentford were going to be severely weakened? I think it would be horrible when he returns to Brentford with Newcastle. There's going to be no chance of applause. I think the likes of Thomas Frank will probably get a decent reception. He didn't really do much wrong when he left. Christian Norgard, again, didn't really do much wrong when he left. Brian Mbeumo will be, standing ovation from all four sides of the ground. Whereas Whissa, I think you might see a hamstring tweak the week before that one, because I doubt he's going to enjoy it coming back to the G-Tech, and likewise when Brentford go up to St James's Park, it's going to be a horrible atmosphere for him, because fans were devastated, as they were with Isak, and especially when how much of this is true you never know, but the reports that were out there about Whissa threatening legal action if he wasn't allowed to pursue the move, him saying that he had the agreement in writing and everything like that, and everything that happened just contributed to it being such a grim situation for everyone involved, that everyone just wanted it over and done with. When the 40 million bid came in, the reaction I saw from Brentford fans was, just get him gone, just sell now, even if you don't get the asking price. And I know they ended up getting, was it 55 and 5 with add-ons or whatever it was. At the end of the day, I don't really care about that, because you can't chuck a pile of money up front and expect it to score 20 goals like he did last season.
Is it very much like it is with Newcastle and Isak, where actually fans don't begrudge him that ambition to want to move to a bigger club? What's angered them is the way that he's gone about it, refusing to train, obviously with Whissa going on social media and what have you. Is it just about ways of getting that move, and both haven't gone about it the right way?
That's exactly it. Because you look at it and you say, if this had started to come out towards the latter end of last season, Newcastle are interested in Whissa, he wants to go, he wants to play European football, and he's been respectful about it, and he's communicated that to the club. I think most Brentford fans would have said, okay, yeah, fine, 20 goals for us in a season when no one knew what was going to happen after Tony left. But as I say, it is just how it happened, and it should have been the case that he got a nice farewell. And I know that social media isn't real life, but it should have been the case where he got a nice social media farewell from the club, and here's the goal against West Ham in the last second, and here's the goal against Liverpool, and it should have been nice. Whereas in reality, Brentford's statement when he left, there was no good luck, there was no thanks for everything. It was just, Yoane Wissa has left. He played for us for this amount of time. He went to AFCON. Bye. It's like for Brentford's all-time Premier League top goal scorer, for this to be how it ends is really upsetting.
Yeah, and again, same with Isak. Whissa did post a lovely Instagram statement after the deal was done, and he said, always be my home, thank you. I'm guessing by your tone and what you've said so far that Brentford fans maybe didn't buy how genuine it was. Would that be fair?
It's not even a case of how genuine it was. It was just a case of you can't disrespect a club like Whissa did, and obviously I'm not privy to what was actually said in those meetings. He may have a valid point. They may have written on a piece of paper that, yes, if Newcastle come in for you, we'll sell you. They may well have done, but I'm just talking about from the optics looking in. Excuse me. From the outside looking in, the optics are terrible. And for him to then turn around and say, yeah, I saw an interview with Sky as well saying, yep, super respectful throughout. And it's like, really? Now you want to put up a social media post and think everything's fine? And again, to go back to the contrast, because I do think there's an interesting contrast with how Brian Mbeumo left. And you look at the video that he put up, and Brentford fans were in tears over that, because he'd gone about it the right way and he'd been such a brilliant servant to the club. And I think there's another interesting contrast to be made. When Ivan Toney left the club, there was a lot of, he's disrespected the club. He's talked about how much he wants to leave. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as this. He was still willing to play. He was just asked the question in interviews, and he answered honestly. And there was the video and that sort of thing of him in Ibiza or wherever it was. But it's still, to me anyway, the contrast is very clear between Ivan Toney was ready to play, Yoane Wissa, bowl account said, I'm never playing again, which is, it's alarming.
Were there any signs of this being Wissa's character? Because Newcastle United's Eddie Howe was built on the right character coming into a team. And obviously, looking from the kind of outside in, it looks like, from my point of view, this is kind of the first time Wissa's acted in this way, and he's kind of maybe done it to force the move. But that's not actually what his character's like. I mean, can you provide some insight into the kind of character he is?
By all accounts, he was a brilliant guy. When he came over to England in the first sort of few months, he'd had an issue where he'd been the victim of an acid attack over abroad, and he spoke openly about how the club had supported him through that, and it seemed like he was just the nicest, most genuine guy, and that may well be the case. This may just be a case of a transfer saga gone wrong. His attitude on the pitch, I'd be surprised if he ever got booked for Brentford. I don't think he ever did. He's not the type of player to go and give it the big one to away defenders. I can't express enough how he is a fantastic footballer as well. I think that now that this is over and the line in the sand's been drawn, I can't see Newcastle having any problems with him whatsoever. It seems like he's a true professional on the pitch, and off the pitch as well. It seems like he's a very genuinely nice person. It's just that this was a transfer saga gone wrong, basically.
Just a reminder, ladies and gents, this episode is sponsored by NORD VPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box to get an exclusive offer on your plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. One subscription, 10 devices. It keeps you safe and secure. All your details, especially when you're browsing public Wi-Fi. So from the train, the bus, restaurant, cafe, wherever you are, you've got NORD VPN playing away in the background, then you can rest assured you'll be nice and safe. Support the podcast and keep secure at the same time. You mentioned the price tag there, Dan. So I think it was 50 million plus 5. The accusation, again, this is just an accusation. We don't obviously know what went on in the boardroom, but is that Brentford kept moving the goalposts, which, they're in their right to do. So I think Wissa's claim of you could leave we had it in writing that I could leave if it was a reasonable offer, but that obviously leaves you open to what a reasonable offer is. I mean, 50 plus 5 is definitely that. But do you think there was a case of Brentford moving the goalposts throughout the summer?
I mean, by all accounts, it seems like the price definitely changed, but prices change all the time. That if my neighbour's selling his house for £100,000 and then I'm selling mine for £100,000, and then the guy 2 doors down manages to sell his for £300,000, me and my neighbour are going to go, well, okay, we'll up the price of ours as well, because that's the going rate. When you see people like, Brian and Bomo went for, I think the total package of 71 million. There was a point last season where Whissa was playing so well that in my head I couldn't make out who was probably worth more money. That's how good Whissa is on his day. But then you see the likes of, Noni Madueke going to Arsenal for 52, I think it was. Whissa's definitely better than Noni Madueke. There was a few other deals that happened that you sort of went, how much is that? Am I reading in the wrong currency? Is that what I'm doing? And then you think, well, if Brentford are looking at that and then thinking, we're not still going to ask for 40 million for Yoane Wissa, and there's no point, especially when you're weakening the team that significantly, having already weakened it by losing Thomas Frank, Brian Bomo, Christian Norgard, you're not still going to accept a lesser amount. So I think they're well within the rights, to have moved those goalposts, as you say. For example, if Newcastle were going to sell Anthony Gordon this summer, they wouldn't look at the 130 they've got for Isak, and say, we'll take 50 for Gordon. The going rate of Premier League strikers and forwards has just gone up significantly this summer, and so it was always natural that the same was going to happen. It's just a shame that it happened, by all accounts, while the two clubs were in negotiations and trying to work out what was a reasonable deal for both sides. Especially considering Whissa is 29 years old now. There's no real resale value on him, so I feel like it's a good deal for all parties. Brentford got the money. Unfortunately, they got it too late to do anything with it. Brentford got the money. Newcastle got their player, and I feel like it's a deal that's worked out well for everyone.
Well, if he starts banging the goals for Newcastle as he did for Brentford, we'll be very happy indeed. But it sounds like you think it's probably fair price tag, whereas I think some Newcastle United fans, in an ideal world, would say it's a little bit over the top. But of course, there were conditions that were not in Newcastle's favour. They needed a striker. They needed to replace Alexander Isak. Brentford knew they were desperate. They also knew they just got about 130 million for Isak through the door as well. So all these things kind of are in Brentford's favour, or in the selling club's favour, aren't they? But it seems like you're on board with the fee.
I mean, yeah, the fee is fantastic, but as I said, the problem for Brentford is that they got the fee on the final day of the transfer window. There's no time then to go out, and they were linked with a couple of strikers from Germany, for Max Bria, I think, from Dortmund and that sort of thing, but they weren't able to get it over the line and that sort of thing. You can't just put a pile of money up front. So that money is very good to Brentford on the accounting books, but on the pitch where it matters, it's you can easily say it's a terrible deal for Brentford. They should have accepted the 50 million hit and kept Whissa and hopefully guaranteed goals. For Newcastle, I mean, richest owners in the history of organised sport, pretty much, with Saudi Arabia, right? So, I know that there are PSR restrictions in place, but in reality, £55 million on a striker who got 20 Premier League goals last season, it's not a bad deal in the slightest. I think that at the moment there can sometimes be too much emphasis put on resale value and put on add-ons and that sort of thing, and things that don't really matter. What matters is that Newcastle United paid £55 million for a striker who should at least guarantee them Premier League goals. With Isak going, at the end of the day, if Whissa comes in and gets 20 Premier League goals for Newcastle, which I doubt he will, but if he did, you're going to be looking at it in a year's time and saying 55 million is absolutely fine. Especially the money that they would get from Champions League qualification if they make it, the TV money that's in football nowadays. 55 million is, for Newcastle, is a very reasonable price in my opinion.
That's exactly how I'm looking at it. Yes, he's 29. Yes, you're not going to make a profit on him when you do go to sell him. But if he bangs in, anything like the record he did at Brentford over the last few seasons, then Newcastle will qualify for Europe and he'll be worth every single penny. And the other thing I'm really impressed with, because we did have issues with Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak when it came to fitness and injury, is that Whissa and his injury record it's pretty much non-existent. I mean, last season he did miss 6 games through an ankle injury at the start of the campaign. Then you have to go all the way back to 21-22, which was another ankle injury where he missed 8 games. I think a couple of them were for his country as well. That's a superb fitness record, isn't it?
Yeah, and as I say, he's always been super reliable. In his first season, he was coming off the bench quite a bit. He was playing on the wing a fair bit as well because of having Ivan Toney through the middle. Or he was playing as a sort of second striker, which is how I'd imagine he'll play for Newcastle with, I won't offend him by mispronouncing his surname, but the new striker that Newcastle have bought, I'd imagine he'll play as a second striker. He is super reliable. He's versatile, he can play across the front three. As I say, his injury record is fantastic. He was the type of player that last season especially, you could always sort of guarantee he would turn up for you and put a shift in. He had the ankle injury. I know that it's not an injury issue at all, but there is AFCON to consider. The fact that Newcastle will lose him for a period of time this season, but every club's going to lose players to AFCON as well. That's not a negative by any means. He's always been reliable. He's always been willing to put effort in. There's never been any questions of him just walking around the pitch sulking or anything like that. If he misses a chance, he doesn't really go into hiding. He'll go and still try and have another go. I think in terms of what Newcastle will get from him, that there's no real downside other than if you want to say the age, but there's no real downside at all.
You mentioned there playing alongside Nick Voldemare, potentially. Obviously, that's going to be something that Eddie Howe is going to have to get the balance right. He's a young man coming into the Premier League. He's only had one prolific season at senior football, so it's a bit of a gamble with him. And I think to begin with, the viewpoint on Whissa is that he may well actually just play as the lone man up top to allow Voldemare to bed in, because Eddie Howe likes to take his time with players. And I guess, that'll be no issue for Whissa. He'll take that responsibility And I mean, he'll hopefully take it with not the idea that I'm doing it for a certain period of time, and then the big record signing comes in. He'll be doing it because that's my spot, and I want to keep that spot.
I would definitely agree with that. As you say, you mentioned that he may start through the middle as a lone striker. Throughout his time at Brentford, he's been a lone striker. He's been a second striker when Brentford are playing two up front, and he's been a left winger. So really, he can fill in across the gaps for Newcastle. If he was to play up front, this may be the scorned ex-lover in me coming out, but you could potentially say that he won't have Bryan Mbeumo next to him, feeding him through lovely through balls to run onto. He won't have Mikel Damsgaard behind him. That's not to take anything away from the players that Newcastle have by any means, but the relationship there was clear between those two players. And so you could easily say, it might take him a little bit more time to sort of figure things out in Newcastle, whereas he had that very fluid connection at Brentford. But as a sort of solo striker, his running is superb. He was caught offside quite a lot in his first season, if I remember rightly. There was a period of time where the fans were a little bit frustrated with how frequently he was offside. But that's not really an issue that the Newcastle are going to encounter this season. I shouldn't think. He can definitely play as a. I would just think who would Newcastle's right winger be in that situation? So it'd be Gordon on the left,
Anthony Elanga. Did that big money signing, so hopefully he can replicate what Bryan Mbeumo managed to do and by the assists.
That's the thing, because Whissa, you can bank on him getting into the box every time. So if Elanga's running down the right wing, you're never going to be looking in the box saying, "Why is no one making a run?" He's always going to be there. And then when Walter does come in, you've got the sort of, I know that the joke's been made on social media a million times, the sort of little and large combination, but that is very similar to the sort of Ivan Toney link up that he had in his first season at Brentford. He's going to do really well, I think, in Newcastle.
Well, fingers crossed. Yeah, I'm excited by the signing just because he's got that Premier League pedigree. He's proven he can do it. He's wearing the number 9 shirt. I mean, that comes with huge responsibility, but it's something that he seemed to want. I think he had that in his mind when the deal was first mooted. Obviously, big names have gone before him. The Premier League's record, a goal scorer in Alan Shearer. How do you think he'll handle wearing the number 9 of Newcastle?
I honestly don't. Please don't think this is me taking anything away from the number 9 at Newcastle, which is obviously one of the most iconic, shirts in the Premier League. You look at that and the Man United 7 and that sort of thing. I don't think he'll care. I don't think that it's the case that he's going to look at it and, put more pressure on himself because he's wearing it or anything like that. I honestly think that he's the type of character who won't be too fussed. He won't take on any extra pressure. Again, I'm realizing more and more as we're talking how much I'm going to miss him as a Brentford fan, because I genuinely don't think that pressure is going to come into it at all. I think he's going to be absolutely fine. I would imagine that the when it comes to European nights and he's playing in front of that atmosphere at St James's Park, maybe the atmosphere there might sort of shock him at first, purely because he's not used to it. Brentford is a smaller club and smaller stadium. That's no Brentford fan's going to argue with that. So you do think, maybe when the lights are brightest, how's he going to deal with it? But I can't see him having any issues at all, especially, the number on his back. I'd imagine that when he goes out onto the pitch, he'll forget about it anyway.
A small matter of Barcelona next week to comprehend with at St James's Park. So not a bad way to start a European campaign. I imagine it'll be actually his first game in the Champions League, will it? So, what a way to start. I'm looking forward to seeing him in that number 9. I think it shows a good test of character as well, that he's wanted that. He's made it clear, I want to wear that shirt, knowing kind of how important it is to everyone on Tyneside. Talk to us about his attributes then. I mean, if there's one thing you're pinpointing to Newcastle United fans to look out for, what is the biggest thing that he brings to Newcastle United?
I'd say there's two: that his dribbling and his finishing, and his runs off the ball. His hold-up play is quite good. He can drop back. He can drop deep and collect the ball and play a pass out wide. He is in many ways the complete package. I'm really going to miss him at Brentford now that I've talked more and more about it. Because if you're a Newcastle fan wondering what to expect from him, I can't even think of the comparison to another Premier League player, to be perfectly honest. He is he's brilliant. His movement off the ball, and you see that a lot. You've seen that a lot throughout last season at Brentford. His, holding off, making a run, and then sprinting past the defender when through ball goes in. I wouldn't say he's exactly a poacher. I'd say he can finish from realistically anywhere, especially inside the box. Brentford haven't really scored too many goals from outside the box in recent years. His finishing is brilliant. His dribbling was, when he first came to Brentford and he first started coming off the bench, quite a lot of the time it was the case that Brentford might be holding on to a lead or holding on to a draw, and you knew that when he got the ball, he was very unlikely to give it away. He could sort of dribble past two players and then draw a foul, or dribble past two players and play it out wide and then make a run. He's not the type of player who'll showboat. You won't see him doing step overs and elasticos or whatever it is that these footballers do. He's not going to show off. He's just a very sensible footballer. His finishing, as you saw last season, 19 Premier League goals, I think, without taking any penalties. So, that sort of speaks for itself in terms of the finishing.
And even at 29, has he got a bit of pace about him?
He's got a little bit of pace, but I wouldn't say that's his biggest attribute. I wouldn't say that he's a quick player. If anything, a scenario that I can see happening is, the ball gets played into him and he can hold it up quite well, and then just ping it in behind for Elanga, who can outpace anyone in the world. I wouldn't say that Whissa is the type of player who will, sprint past three players, but he's so smart he doesn't have to, if that makes sense. He knows when to time his run, so that he is already 2 feet past the defender before they've noticed, and that sort of thing. He's not too quick, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily a drawback, because he's smart and he knows how to use what pace he does have.
In terms of the biggest drawback, what is it that we have to look out for? Where can he improve the most, do you think?
Biggest drawback is if Real Madrid come in for him, he's likely to go on strike again. No, if you want an actual drawback, it's honestly the only thing that you could be negative and say is that before this season, his goal scoring record wasn't exactly what it was. And so you can say, was last season an anomaly? Was last season just he was playing next to Bryan Mbeumo, who, arguably best player in Brentford's recent history. So, did he make him look better? Is he going to have that same link at Newcastle? Is he going to sort of gel in the same way? Is he going to be used in the same way? It's tough to say. But in terms of a drawback on his game, I mean, I guess that the only thing you could say is that he doesn't exactly have the same pace. You wouldn't exactly put a long ball up top for him to try and win a header. I'd say he is very smart with his hold-up play, but he's not going to be towering over any defenders. Let's put it that way.
Well, to finish off then, can you, again, just sum up, I guess, what you think he can achieve over the next couple of years at Newcastle United, and whether Newcastle United fans should be excited or not about their new number 9?
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle fans should definitely be excited. And yeah, as I've mentioned, this has made me realise, talking about him now, has made me realise how much I'm going to miss him at Brentford. He's an absolutely fantastic player. I think that in terms of what he can achieve, I would imagine that for him at this stage of his career, he would want to win a trophy at Newcastle. Obviously, fork found in kitchen footballer wants to win a trophy. That's not exactly stating anything outlandish. He'd want to win a trophy and score as many goals as he can. Playing in Europe as well is obviously a big thing for him. So if he can just get some game time in Europe, that would be good. I wouldn't expect him to, score 30 goals every season and push Newcastle towards challenging for the league title. But I would say that for what he is, I would say, yeah, it's a fantastic deal for Newcastle in terms of allowing them to not have a sharp drop off from Isak. Say if he can aim to get some goals next season or this season, play in Europe, and then, as I say, I would imagine he would want to win a trophy, and I would imagine that obviously that's Eddie Howe's goal as well. That's got to be the aim.
And I guess that's the important thing, isn't it? That technically him, I mean, you could argue Valtamade as well, come in to replace Isak, but Isak is arguably the best striker in the world at the moment, and replace him was always the impossible task. So Newcastle fans shouldn't focus on that. They should focus on what Whissa can do positively, and that's going to be hopefully score a boatload of goals in the Premier League.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at him and say, he's the type of player who's going to take on 3 players and then pop into the top corner like Isak did a couple of times last season. But I would say, in terms of what he is, he's a brilliant footballer who can score goals, and that's exactly what Newcastle need. I wouldn't say he improves Newcastle's team without Isak, but I would just say he allows for a continuation of, he could potentially score as many goals as Isak, and he basically just allows Newcastle to continue. Whereas if they hadn't have done this deal, they're relying on Voltemada, who could be fantastic, but no one really knows how he'll adapt to the Premier League. And obviously, having lost Isak, you would expect a sharp drop off. I wouldn't expect that now that Whissa's there.
Fingers crossed it all works out. Thank you very much, Dan, for popping on for a therapy session by all accounts, because you were very angry maybe at the start, and now you're nice and relaxed and reminiscing about how good Whissa was, right?
Yeah, it was. It's made me realise made me remember how good he was, but it's just a shame it ended this way.
Well, I think you will have definitely pleased our listeners and viewers, because towards the end they're very positive about Yoane Wissa, and fingers crossed he can bang the goals in for Newcastle United. Thank you to everyone watching and listening. Remember to hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, get into the comments on YouTube, leave us a rating and review on the audio-only platform, and take advantage of your NORD VPN plan in the podcast description box. It's a discounted offer. Again, no risk with 30-day money-back guarantee. Support the podcast. Keep yourself secure while browsing online, and I'll see you guys very soon.